Look, as Paul Kelly pointed out in a very good piece in The Australian this week, there is a clash of rights, if you like. I mean, to some people, they think that everybody has the right to be who they want to be, to present in whatever gender they want to present to, or whatever. And against that, you've got to set the right, which we've spoken about already, to religious belief, to religious freedom, and to act upon those beliefs in what you believe to be a moral and correct way. Doesn't this show that we really are lacking in this country religious freedom bill or religious freedom act to at least establish that people should have the freedom to worship as they wish and the freedom to hold certain beliefs, and for a school or hospital which is run according to Christian principles to be able to make its own decisions as to who they employ, how they employ them, what operations they might carry out, etc., etc.
Yeah, and perhaps up until this point, we've taken it for granted that those protections exist in our Constitution. But because there is now an attack against the Christian belief system, we really do need those protections enshrined in a Religious Freedom Act or a Religious Discrimination Act. And we were nearly there under the Morrison government. But now with what Labor are proposing, I've actually seen the draft bill that they've written, and it doesn't protect religious freedoms. In fact, it lessens them, and it takes away the current exemptions that exist in the Sex Discrimination Act that actually act as a protection for Christians to hire according to their Christian ethos. Our view has always been that if they remove those protections in the Sex Discrimination Act, then they need to create a Religious Discrimination Act that makes up for that frames these exemptions as positive rights. It is not discrimination to hire according to a Christian ethos. That's a positive right rather than saying it's an exemption from discrimination. But in the Religious Discrimination Bill that I've seen that the Senator Cash actually took me through line by line, it certainly does not do that. In fact, it restricts our rights even more.
But it's the iron law of public policy that you never get a 100% perfect legislation. You're always looking for the least worst, and very often it's good because you'll achieve 50% of what you want even if you don't achieve 100%. But are you saying that you'd rather this legislation in this form was not enacted?
In its current form, it would be worse for Christian institutions, for all religious institutions. Definitely we would rather it not be implemented as it is, but to wait until we get a better model. This could be after an inquiry or after more consultation. See, we haven't had an inquiry into with religious leaders into what would happen if those protections in the Sex Discrimination Act were removed. That wasn't discussed in the last inquiry in the Morrison government. We're in a different playing field now, and there needs to be an inquiry into what that would mean for Christian and religious institutions if those protections were removed.
My colleague Lyle Shelton will be following up this in a more detailed way in his program on ADH this week, a predecessor of yours at the ACL, of course, Michelle. And look, I take my hat off to the work you do, the energy you bring to this. But you must feel, as many people in the church do now, that they are very much on the back foot.
Yeah, and the fact is that we are not going to compromise on our beliefs. We love everybody. It's our Christian message. We love all people. We believe God loves everybody, and so we love everybody. We don't seek to discriminate against somebody just because they're homosexual or trans. But we believe inherently, so deeply, that God created male and female in his image, and that our design for sexuality is in marriage between male and female. And so any conduct that's outside of that is not a conduct that we would celebrate within our religious institutions. And that's not to intimidate or cause anybody any hard feelings. That's simply what we believe. And, for centuries, Australians have allowed us to believe that and teach according to these ethical principles. But now we're seeing this being challenged by different laws that are passing all over Australia. But I still think, as you said before, Nick, that the reasonable person in Australia actually believes that we should be able to maintain our ethos, that this shouldn't be stripped away by opposing ideologies. We can all live together quite happily in our democratic, pluralistic society with different views, but allow us to have our Christian spaces and allow us to teach and act according to our beliefs.
Yeah, and your opponents would want to judge you as being cruel or bullying or unpleasant in the way you do this. But in every instance where I've had a chance to go to a Christian school and see on the ground how they actually deal with a child who's perhaps confused about their gender identity, as children often are or sometimes are in their teens, the amount of care that goes into their pastoral responsibilities towards that child is extraordinary. I can't believe you could get a better supporting environment anywhere in the education system.
Absolutely. If there is a child that's struggling in any area of their identity, a Christian response would be to support them as much as possible, to help them to see that they're a person of incredible worth, that they're created in God's image, that they're incredibly loved and valuable, that God has a plan for their lives. These are all positive messages that build into someone a strong sense of identity. And with what's being taught at other schools, at public schools, it's stripping away identity and causing children to be so confused. Parents are seeing that. The community is seeing that. That's why they're taking their kids out of the public school system and putting them into non-government schools.
We're recording this on Maundy Thursday. We're just about to go into the most important 3 days of the Christian calendar. But it's the 3 days, of course, which ends with a great message of hope. Where's the hope in what we've been discussing today?
We hope that the government will pass a good religious discrimination act that certainly will protect Christians. We're not sure if that's able to happen within this term of government, especially when the Albanese, it was reported to have said that he would do a deal with the Greens if he doesn't get bipartisan support. That's certainly going to be terrible for Christians. But if the government are willing to open the doors, negotiate, let's have a proper inquiry. Let's look at what's going to happen if those protections are removed from the Sex Discrimination Act, and perhaps the government will see that reasonable Australians actually advocate for the protection of Christians and Christian institutions as well. Hopefully, we can just see this whole thing turn around.
Michelle Pearse, may God strengthen you in the work that you do there at the ACL and all your supporters and team there. Thank you for joining us on ADH TV.